We are here for our third visiting artist of the semester, and we're at National Park College. This is the digital photography class. I'm a teacher. My name is Dan Anderson. You all know that, but just in case we record this and post it somewhere, I'll just let everybody know that. It's March 3rd, 2021. And this is a pretty fun day today. I'm pretty excited because when I agreed to do this class, I'm more of a filmmaker than a photographer, but I know a lot of really great photographers. So the first thing that came to my mind is, oh boy, wouldn't it be great to have an extended conversation with some of my favorite photographers, some people that I know that I just haven't had a chance to really delve into photography with before. And one of the first people on my list was Aaron Brewer, someone I've known probably for about a decade now, but we're both fairly reserved people in a sense. So like our interactions are usually pretty like quick. Usually I'm doing some kind of event organizing, Aaron's doing photographing, and we kind of pass real quick, but we don't really have a chance to have a good talk about photography. So this will be fun. And Aaron is someone who, in the local photography world in Central Arkansas, if you think of portrait photography, if you think of sports photography, you think of Aaron Brewer. He's just got a certain magic to his photographs that really pops, and it's just really noticeable. So very happy to have him here. I think he's been in Hot Springs for several years now. Is that right, Aaron?
Yeah, I've lived here since late 2016, but have been coming here and hanging out with the people and everything since about 2008.
Okay, and you kind of started it started somewhat as a hobby. Am I right about that? And then it's gotten a little more gotten professional here lately.
Right, yeah. Actually, so I graduated from the University of Arkansas back at the end of the last decade, or no, not last decade, last century, with a degree in computer information systems, and went to work for some big data gathering companies in Central Arkansas, Little Rock primarily, and lived there. I was looking for some sort of creative outlet. I can't draw, can't really write, certainly can't play music. So I was just looking for something, and photography seemed to be a good way to explore some creativity and make things. And I picked up just a small digital point and shoot camera about the middle, let's see, about 2007 or so. And then met in Hot Springs, as a matter of fact, my first trip to Hot Springs, met a photographer from Nashville named Thomas Patillo, and became friends with him. And that just sort of got my fire for photography sort of up and running. And at first it did start out, I would just shoot local events, particularly concerts at Low Key Arts, which is in downtown Hot Springs, or was in downtown Hot Springs, and just sort of started meeting the people around here. I eventually quit the jobs in data technology. If you are a computer programmer, you have to really have a brain that's suited for that. And I didn't at all. And it was getting to the point where it was really starting to affect my mental health. And I quit that game and picked up odd jobs here and there. Worked it out. I don't know if you guys know Collective downtown. Worked there for about 3.5 years. And all the while just sort of picking up little jobs in photography, people who, maybe knew that I took photos. And then it just sort of got progressively more and more. I started picking up sports photography and started doing portrait photography, and eventually left the job at Collective and started doing photography full time, and have been for, I guess, about close to 4 years now. So, professionally, I've been doing it since about 2011, but full time for about the past 4 years, I guess.
Well, that's a big jump too, jumping from computer science to photography. And that's something that I think a lot of people in life are reluctant to do that, to really, you know, that you're the technical, everybody has a technical side and then they have a creative side. And a lot of times people are afraid to overlap that. So
Right.
uh, I think that's a little bit inspiring in a way that, you know, that you realize that it was a good time to do something like that.
Yeah, and it really was. I mean, I made significantly more money in the computer information field, but like I said, I mean, it was getting to the, you know, to some dangerous points with my mental health in the job because I just wasn't suited for that. You know, that's not what I'm good at. And yeah, it was a big leap, and it was really scary to just say I'm going to leave that behind. But you know, in order to have a quality of life that I want to have, I've got to let go of, you know, the material things and honestly a little bit of security as well, with, you know, 401ks and all that, working for large companies, and just kind of go out on my own. But you know, I mean, I'm as happy as I've been, you know, certainly since the end of college, you know, when sort of the good times stopped, and then, you know, had to get out there on your own in the world. So but yeah, it's, I definitely recommend, if you can do something that you love, you know, you always hear that cliche, but it is true. You know, if you can do something that you love, and it makes a world of difference just in your day-to-day life.
Well, sounds great. We'll appreciate the intro there, and we just had a couple more people jump in on our Zoom. So yeah, we can go ahead and if you want to switch over your screen, we can take a look at some of the photographs you have, and of course, the class, they do get a point of extra credits if they ask a question. So anybody's welcome to jump in. A lot of times,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah, and to that point, any of y'all, if you have any questions, you know, I have this sort of loosely structured. So if you have questions, I'm more than happy to stop what I'm talking about, and, you know, I can circle back around to it, and we can talk about whatever it is that you guys want to talk about. You know, I'd much rather do that than, you know, y'all just listen to me drone for the next hour or so. So, all right. So really, I guess the first thing I was going to talk about is maybe just a little more of my backstory with photography. I really, the first time I sort of got interested in photography, I think I was like 13. We were on this trip to Washington, D.C., and I had, you know, just a point and shoot camera. This was back in the film days. So was just taking photos around Washington, D.C., and I think we went to, I don't know, there's an old settlement nearby, and just ended up taking some pictures that I thought had some sort of artistic merit to them. They weren't just snapshots. And, you know, mom, of course, was really supportive of me and everything. But that's really sort of the first time it, you know, it hit me that I might like to do something with photography. Um, really didn't take it serious again until I got out of college. Um, but during that time, I'd sort of been seeing photographs by people and, uh, you know, famous photographers. And that really got me started on noticing how important photographs were to communicating ideas and, you know, just to aesthetics in general. You know, I think as photographers, we all like to, you know, have things look really nice, well composed, sort of put together. And so I just thought I'd talk about a few of my favorite photographers and what I see as influences for myself. Um, the first one, I remember this very distinctly. You know, once I got into University of Arkansas, I thought, well, it's time to, you know, start acting classy and everything. And I got a subscription to the New Yorker, and I think I maybe looked through the first two issues, and, you know, the rest of the time they just sit in a corner. But in one of those first two issues, there was this photo essay by a photographer named James Noctway, and he was documenting the Rwandan genocide that had just happened in Rwanda between the Hutus and the Tutsis. And some of those photos just, I mean, they were very jarring. They were very graphic. You know, there were individuals who had machete cuts in the sides of their faces. And to me, it just, that sort of captivated me, the way in which I could read a story about it all day long, but to actually see photographs of that kind of carnage really, you know, grabbed me and told me more about what was going on in the world around me. And this is just, I just have a few photos of his. He's a photojournalist. There was a documentary, I want to say it was like in 2000 or 2001, called War Photographer, that is about him. And, you know, he goes into these locations that I certainly don't have the bravery or the courage to go into, but, you know, putting himself in harm's way. You know, you can see this rebel fighter here shooting out of a window. You know, he's right there with him. You know, and again, aside from just the fact that you're communicating what's going on in the world, it's well composed. Actually, you know, it's quite a beautiful photograph. But you know, it's sort of showing something very, you know, very wrong and very disturbing that's happening in the world. Let me see. There was another. Oh, this during the mid or late 90s, there was a genocide in Bosnia, and he was in the middle of that. What I really like about that documentary, War Photographer, is he sort of talks about ways in which he gets buy-in with his subjects, so that, you know, they don't feel like they're being exploited, but instead they're able to have their stories told through his photographs. This just being, you know, two brothers who are mourning the loss of another brother right here. Again, you know, beautiful photograph just in the composition, people in the background, that type of thing. Let's see, I think I had maybe one more by him. And I apologize, guys. I was gonna sort all these out, but then right before I started to log in, I found my studio had no internet and I had to pack up everything and run home. And so I didn't get a chance to sort through these and really categorize them. But this is another one that Noctway took as well. This man's being chased down by a mob, very violent image, but again, you know, showing what's going on in the world. I believe this might have been in the Philippines, not entirely sure. But anyway, so that was sort of the first photographer that really grabbed me and that I became aware of, you know, the concept of photographers. You know, we see images all the time, but didn't really associate a particular individual with their photographs. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I got a quick, just a quick question. When did you get into those photographs? Is that recently, or was that more
Say that one more time, I'm sorry.
I was just wondering, the photographs we were looking at, are those images that you found early on, or are they more recent?
So the ones that I just showed, I found them, I guess, around 2000 or so. You know, the Rwandan genocide, that first one that I saw, that really struck me was in 1995. I believe the article in the New Yorker that, you know, had his photo essay in there was in 1995. So yeah, he's kind of been, you know, since graduating high school, he's sort of always been there in the background of, you know, what I do. And I've kind of taken that on. I do, you know, lots of different styles of photography. And one of the earliest was, you know, I call it candids or photojournalism type stuff. Certainly I never saw anything like the photos that he's taking, but, you know, photos of friends at events and things like that. And, you know, kind of using him as inspiration for finding those good moments that really showcase what an event was about. You know, people are having fun, if they're not happy, that type of thing. So, and, you know, as I was saying that he was like the first photographer, I totally forgot really the first photographer, and that was Ansel Adams, which, you know, at the time when I first started buying his yearly calendars. He wasn't a huge name. He's a really well-known name today. He was in the early 1900s. He took these huge sweeping landscapes particularly of the American West, the national park system as it was up and coming. And, you know, that was another inspiration for me as well. This photo right here, this is the Grand Teton Mountains and Snake River, probably one of his most famous photos. I actually had the chance to go to the Grand Tetons, wasn't last year, I guess it was in 2019, and they actually have a marker where he stood and took this photo. And, you know, of course, for my own ego, I took a photo there as well. I'm not sure if I have it just real handy here. Yeah, this is going to be a pain for y'all watching me scroll through this. No, I don't. Let's see. Wait, now I'm going to find it here real quick. Just have a various.
It's all right.
What's that?
It's all right.
But okay, yeah. So this is not the exact same location, but you know, I went and took some photos of the Grand Tetons. You know, when I'm doing landscapes and stuff like this, I'm very frantic because I'm always trying to get that, you know, the right light. Sunrises, sunsets are always like the best time to get a lot of landscapes because really brings out the shadows in the landscape. The tones tend to be warmer and stuff. So I'm sure I was cursing and driving 100 miles an hour trying to get to the right spot here. Luckily it's Wyoming, so not a lot of cars around and stuff. But anyway, so that's kind of a tangent I went on there. But he is, come back here. Ansel Adams was, I guess, really that first photographer. This is Yosemite Valley and Yosemite National Park. Again, he was here before, you know, so many other people were there. I went there in 2018, and I mean, it was literally bumper to bumper traffic, but you know, he was there at a time when, you know, people weren't documenting this stuff nearly as much as they are now. There's a lot to take photos like this. Another photographer that I sort of got into was a man by the name of Stephen Shore, and he took photos that are very commonplace locations or commonplace items, and really sort of brought it into art. You know, I mean, this is just let's see, what is that? I mean, that is a advanced medical. So this is just, you know, this is like a medical building right here, but it's nighttime, the American flag's in the window. You know, he's taking photos like that. He does a lot of photos that are sort of, you know, dead on, and this isn't great resolution on this photo. Let's see here. And that's not great either. But, you know, he takes these just dead set on photos, and these are all taken in like the early 70s, things like that. You know, here's another one. We got some graffiti, some Stars of David. So this might have been, you know, something that's a little anti-Semitic that he saw in his daily life and that type of thing. And I did a project. I don't know if y'all use Instagram or anything, but a lot of people do these Project 365s where you take one photo a day and post one photo a day. And I did that for about half of 2018 for a week in 2020. But, you know, a lot of my photos are sort of informed by Stephen Shore's photography as well. Let me see if I have another one by him real quick. Yeah, again, this, you know, very simple, but the nice shadows that are going on. So, you know, as photographers, we're always sort of looking and noticing shadows, noticing textures. you know, things that are out of the ordinary. You know, judging by these cars, this is probably mid 2000s or something like that. And so, you know, this one car sort of sets, you know, is set apart from everything else that's going on in that picture, along with the sort of the stucco building behind it. So again, that's just another photographer. And then there are others as well. There's a guy, his last name is Disfarmer. I can't remember his first name right now. You don't happen to remember, do you, Dan?
Yeah, it's Mike.
Mike Disfarmer. Yeah, so he's from Heber Springs, Arkansas, and he takes these really austere, very sterile portraits of families. And they, you know, it might just be two individuals standing next to each other, but that's another individual that sort of, I guess, kind of informs my own style now as well. A lot of my portraits, I don't know that I have any that are, people are smiling in them. You know, typically they're looking very, stern's not the word, but, you know, they don't look like they're, you know, having the best time in the world. And that just kind of comes from, you know, looking at photos by Disfarmer as well. So any questions about anything before I guess I start talking about my own work? We're 25 minutes in and I haven't really talked about my own work here. So like I mentioned, really the first thing I started shooting once I started picking up a camera, picking up a DSLR camera, is events, in particular concerts. So like I mentioned, used to be an arts organization here in Hot Springs called Low Key Arts, and they always put on an annual independent music festival called the Valley of the Vapors. And that was really where I started sort of getting in and taking photos of people. You know, I even got this photo of Dan Anderson from, this is 2018. So, you know, it's where I met Dan, probably was Low Key Arts. But then, you know, we have lots of photos of bands in particular. Lots of photos of the people that were there. I did a lot of black and white at this time. If you've ever shot low light, a lot of the skin tones end up looking really strange. They can be really purple or really red. So, you know, if you take that out and just make them black and white, you get these really sort of stark photos, high contrast. And, you know, I really like those myself. You know, another example, this was I don't remember the name of this band, but she was very animated, hair just whipping around. And this one, I really like the red in her hair, the purple tones, the red pants as well. So, you know, that again, but, you know, these are some of my sort of later concert photos. But really early on, I don't know, they're kind of a mess. I really didn't know how to operate the camera really well. Didn't understand the settings that I was shooting with, and ended up getting a lot of photos like this. And I'm not necessarily against, you know, my photos looking like this. This shows a lot of movement, and this particular guitarist, I mean, she was maybe one of the most animated guitarists I've ever seen. And, you know, having sort of a lack of knowledge about my camera kind of added to this particular photo. You know, you can see a lot of movement, which, like I said, she was moving all over the place. So, you know, you kind of end up with these happy accidents. During this time period, this was probably 8 years ago. I wasn't using the camera very well. I ended up with a lot of bad shots rather than good ones, like maybe the first 3 that I showed you guys. Let me see if I had any more. Yeah, so this is another, in this particular case, I'm using a fisheye lens, which really gathers the area around your scene, and also warps it. So you can see we've kind of got this circular effect, this fisheye effect going on. You know, you can even see excuse me, photographers over here on the left-hand side, some people over here as well. I was dead center, probably 3 feet away from them, but with that fisheye, it really, you know, kind of gathers it all in. All right. Any questions about anything?
I've got a quick one just about your event photography. It seems like you've just got a really good way of being able to just be dropped into an event and kind of blending in and being invisible in a way where you're not really noticed, but you're still taking these great photos. So I wanted to just kind of ask you about that process, and then do you, when you're taking event photos, do you enjoy being there, or is it more of, do you enjoy the documentation more than the
Yeah,
experience?
that's a good question. I'm very introverted. You know, like you mentioned, sort of at the top of the show here. And I don't like to stand out. I hate sort of being the center of attention in a large group. You know, for a photo like this, I really don't have any choice. If I want to get that photo, I have to be front and center, you know, to get this particular shot, because I can't be at the back of the theater or the back of the club and get a shot like this. So that requires me to sort of go outside of myself and beyond my comfort zone. Low Key Arts is a place that I'm very familiar with. I'm very familiar with a lot of the people that run it, that frequent it. And so I don't have that quite as much of that self-consciousness when I'm taking photos like this, because everybody's like, oh, there's Aaron, he's going to be you know, taking photos. Another thing that I like to do, you know, is I'll actually walk behind the curtain back here and actually take photos from the back, shooting towards the crowd. And again, just kind of hiding back there, hoping that nobody sees me. Because a lot of times when people see you taking photos of them, if, you know, if it's not a case of, it very often changes demeanor in front of the camera. And I mean, I have tons of photos where people are just acting natural. Then they see me and they just instantly tense up, or they try to act like they think you want them to look. And that, I try to avoid that as much as possible. So at events like this, I try to I stay in the background as much as possible if I can. Like I mentioned, in a case like this, I do have to get in there. But I'm a huge music fan. I love live music. I love Low Key Arts, the arts organization that puts this this event on. So I'm enjoying being there. It's not merely a job. It's not merely to document, although, you know, that's certainly a good side effect. But I do like creating visuals like this. And, you know, being able to go back, this was taken in 2019, being able to go back and look at these and, you know, just remember those times. Low Key Arts has moved out of this building that is used to host the event. And so, you know, now it's this visual documentation of what used to go on there, and, you know, the good times that we always used to have.
Great. Yeah, and I guess I somewhat want to apologize for calling you reserved too. I know I'm someone that gets tagged with the introverted label sometimes, and I do not like that label.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, do you yourself, this is just off topic, but do you, how do you feel about that labeling, that introvert label?
I mean, you know, I wouldn't say I wear it as a badge of pride, but I certainly, I couldn't agree with it more. I mean, you know, being around large groups of people just drains me. I have to have those times where I'm alone and just, you know, hanging out and thinking. Small talk in particular just wears me out. So Yeah, I don't mind it. Reserved is true, unless you know me, and then I don't know, I can get annoying really quick. But yeah.
Well, photography really tends to appeal to people who like to have a little bit of a barrier. That camera sort of helps.
Yeah, and yet, I often hear that. On the other hand, I feel just like the opposite of that. People talk about it, like you said, it puts this barrier between you and the person that you're taking the photo of. I, on the other hand, just feels like it injects me into whatever they're doing. If you see someone taking a photo of you and maybe you don't know who they are, or you don't know why they're taking the photo, all of a sudden, your focus is the person taking the photo. And I did a gallery, my very first gallery, called People Clearly Annoyed with My Presence. And it's just outtake photos of people who see me and they look like they really hate that I'm taking their photo. Because, I was just taking photos maybe at events like this. So I don't know. I mean, myself being introverted and not liking to get into people's way, I mean, it's a little tough because I feel just the opposite. I feel like it injects me into their world more than it would if I were just standing there. So, something you got to deal with. All right. Let's see. So I've kind of recently, I say recently, probably in the last 4 years or so, have gotten more into doing portraiture of people. There's a big market for that, particularly around senior pictures, things like that. So I was going to bring out the very first portrait session I did, and I did this in 2010, and it's absolutely horrible. And like I look at these photos now, and I can't believe. I mean, look at that. That's just so bad. I mean, he looks terrible. There's a bird feeder in the background for God knows what reason. It's really bad. And then this is another from the same. It's out of focus. Why do I have this tree in the picture? It's so bad. And like I said, this was 2012 or 2012. And I thought it would just be easy. I thought I now have an external flash for my DSLR. It's going to be easy. I'm just going to get there and start taking photos. And that's not the case. There are ways to take good portraits, and these certainly weren't them. I don't know. Me and my friend Zach, we occasionally come back to these and just laugh at how terrible they are. But so I've started getting into using more studio lighting, and this is my friend's daughter. Now I'm utilizing, I think in this one I may only be using a single light, but big umbrellas to soften the light that's coming out of the flashes that I'm using. Adding something interesting to her hair, for instance, as well. Let's see, but and doing some editing as well around facial blemishes and that type of thing. And let me just show you. I spend a lot of time in the editing process as well, particularly with portraiture. If you're doing a lot of young adults, acne tends to be a problem. And so you spend a little bit of time in that realm. So this is just to kind of show you the amount of editing that I might do on a photo. So this one is a young lady that I took a photo of, but the before photo, and I don't know how well this translates, but there were issues with acne going on, and we kind of cleaned that up. I find that my goal is to present a photo to someone that they're going to want to have and be able to say, this is what they looked like, regardless of what was going on, maybe with their complexion at the time. Usually I'll edit anything out that's maybe going to be gone in 2 weeks or so, something like that. Let's see if I can find another example of that. So this is Ella. And then, we're just kind of smoothing a few things out here and there, kind of, making the skin tones a little bit better. So I do spend a lot of time, not just with the camera, but also in the Photoshop, in Adobe Lightroom as well. I don't know, Dan, if they're working with any of those products to do any sort of editing to their photos, but that is something that I do quite a bit.
We do. Got one question that came up here, which I think you're kind of in the process of answering a bit, but it's we've got a few questions here piling up. But one I'll ask is, how do you evolve from those first senior pictures with your friend to what you're doing now? The question is just how do you get from that point to the point you're at?
Yeah, exactly. It's just taking tons of photos, just trial and error, doing things. I actually haven't shot my friend Zach since this one. He wants to shoot again, 10 years later, but it's just getting in there, finding out what works and what doesn't. I mentioned early on my friend Thomas Patillo, who's a professional photographer in Nashville. I'll talk to him a lot about, lighting setups and things like that. Or, I'm not just doing studio lighting with, big umbrellas and high powered flashes. This is another young girl that I shot, I want to say about 3 years ago, but this is just in the backyard, and I've sort of found a system that works. I'm no longer using an on-camera flash, because that produces really her out of direct sunlight so that I don't have harsh shadows on her face as well. So you learn those things just as you go along, and really, there's no better way to find, I guess, that that balance than just taking tons of photos and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't. And you'll look at stuff that you took early on and be unimpressed by it, or like I said, I'll look at my pictures of Zach early on and just laugh at how naive I was then, and thinking that I could just be able to just pick up a camera and take photos without practicing. But yeah, practice.
Now, if you're at doing a photo shoot like with the girl there, how many photos do you think you would take to get?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll probably take maybe, probably as many as 100, maybe 150 if things are going really well. And I'll try different angles. I might move, like have her stand in one spot and move around her, where the light will change. Even small changes in light can make a big difference in the way in which a photo looks. You might get more dramatic light if it's coming from directly to the side of someone as opposed to in front of them, where it's maybe more flat and produces sort of more. I was trying to think if I have. Well, so this picture of Savannah is a good example, I think, of that. I have the light off to her, it'd be off to her left, and it produces this really dark area right around here, makes it very dramatic. So just moving that around, if I were to ask her to face more to her left, then more of her face would be covered. It wouldn't be as dramatic a shot. So a lot of times I'm experimenting as we're doing a photo shoot, just trying, because it is digital photography. It's not like the days of film where you got 36 shots, max on a roll and then had to have them all developed. You just take shot after shot, try out different lighting, maybe put someone in the sun, put the sun behind them, put it directly in front of them, and just kind of see what's working and what isn't working. So yeah, again, probably 100 to 150. Now I said that I don't tend to do photos where people are smiling or laughing, but this is senior photos, and parents don't like their kids to look angry or sad when they're doing senior portraits. So, we've got them smiling here, but this is on the veranda of the Arlington. It's got nice diffuse light coming from their right-hand side. You don't have these really strong shadows on their faces. It's all kind of nice and even. A lot of people will say to me, it's really sunny out. It's probably a great day for photos, but that's really not the case at all. I like cloudy days or shade because it produces much softer shadows on people's faces. I'll try to find one in a minute, but one of my first senior portrait shoots was, for some reason, I have her looking into direct sunlight, and the shadows on her face are so harsh. It's really not a good look. Whereas this one, for instance, they got these nice soft shadows under the nose on the left sides of their faces as well.
Do you have a favorite lens to use when you're taking portraits?
Yeah, I do actually. So this is, if you ever just, see me, one thing we didn't talk about, I'm the photographer for National Park College. You'll see me at a lot of the sports games, whether it's basketball or baseball, and softball, those are the big three right now. But I'll typically have this set up. Hold on just a second. Which is a 70-200 lens. Now, that's pretty expensive, if you're just starting out, but it really is a fantastic fantastic lens for taking portraits, because it sort of flattens the image. If I were to take a photo with, say, let me grab, just a second. So if I were to use this 17mm to 40mm lens, the way in which the lens will gather that much or make that wide a shot is by distorting the edges. And so if you take a portrait with a lens like this, you end up with people with very big noses, and then it kind of falls off to the side. So using a wide angle lens for portraits tends to not be the greatest thing in the world, because it does distort the features, makes them look a good bit different in some cases than they would if they were using this 70-200. So typically what I say is the longer focal length tends to be best, because it compresses the image and makes it more like what you see when you see people just out in the world.
So how far away would he have to be standing with that 70-200 lens?
That's a good question, and I can probably. Because this should actually say how far I am away. No, I guess maybe it doesn't. I'm probably, I don't know, maybe 10 feet away from them. Okay. So, not all that far away from them. I use a really wide aperture. this particular photo. No, hold on. Let me find this one. And of course, it's not there either. I'll use like an F4 or an F2.8 so that I get, come back to this one for a second, so that I get that nice background blur so that they're really set off from the background and really pop, as opposed to, you know, being able to see the details in the chairs back here. I mean, there might even be people sitting back here, but they're so blurred out by using such a big aperture value that, you know, it's really not anything you have to consider there. And Dan, did you have other questions? I know you thought you mentioned there was some like piling up or something like that.
Yeah, there's a couple questions here. Let's see here. One is relating a little bit more towards the event photos. And with the event photos, the question was if you stage the photos or if you wait for the right particular moment.
Right, right. In events exclusively, I just wait for the right moments. And actually, one of the few types of photography that I don't do are wedding photos. And the main reason for that is because, you know, a lot of times you can't ask them to do something again if you miss it. You know, if you don't get the kiss, you can't ask them to get back up there and do it again. So that's just more pressure than I want to deal with. But, you know, as you're doing something like shooting a band or shooting sports, let me see if I got some sports photos in here real quick. Yeah, so this is one. This is the championship game, state championship game. You know, I'm just looking for, you know, clusters of things that are happening at the event. And there's usually a rhythm to a lot of these things, right? So a band, of course, there's rhythm to it. You know that there's, you know, there's a verse, there's going to be a chorus coming up, and maybe you're watching the singer, and in the chorus he does something, you know, spectacular, maybe jumps up in the air, something like that. I can a lot of times anticipate, oh, here comes the chorus again. He might do that same thing again. So if I miss it the first time, I can come back and be ready for it the second time. Rhythm of whatever event you're at. I've shot enough championship basketball games to know that the very first thing that's going to do is people are just going to run together. They're going to hug each other. They're going to be just elated as to what's going on. So I just try to get in there at those moments, and you know, I think that makes a nice photo right there. You know, very similar. If I see a big play that goes down, I'm looking for maybe the people that are going to be most excited about it. This guy just scored. I think he tied up the game like in the last seconds. He's real pumped up. You know, you just kind of, you certainly don't stage event photos per se. I mean, you might, you know, ask people to get together for a group photo or something like that. But, you know, if you're shooting events and trying to get a real feel for the event and what's going on there, you'll just, you know, just kind of watch people and see how, you know, see how things sort of play out, I guess you could say. And, you know, I got some sports photos here. There's a famous photographer who said that if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not close enough. And I found that to be often the case. And, you know, for someone like me who's introverted, that's, you know, a little anxiety inducing. But when I first started taking photos of sports, I was sitting up in the stands, and, you know, this is not a fantastic photo right here, but, you know, I was new to it, just trying to get some experience. And so, you know, sitting in the stands, I'm actually above the backboard. You know, this guy, the guy who's making the shot, is out of focus. You know, Paris Harris from Hot Springs is in focus, a nice look on his face and everything. But, you know, this is where just practice, you know, gets you into it. So eventually I got out of the stands and would, you know, get down there at court level, and, you know, get the shots. Typically I sit down on the floor just because I like that angle better, but, you know, just get in the middle of it as much as possible and try to get close to the action as opposed to, you know, staying up in the stands. Just see if I got another one in here real quick.
And you really seem to get kind of emotionally involved in the sports too, and I kind of know just from following your social media that sometimes you just get really excited about it, and you kind of have a way of just finding in situations kind of a good radar for finding these emotional moments.
Yeah, and you know, I think, like, again, it comes with practice, and it comes with doing it a lot. Is just, you know, finding, you know, what those moments are going to be, where they're going to be happening. I thought I had more. I was going to see if I had another. Yeah, like for instance, this one right here. This was very close to the end of the game, very close game. I'm down on the floor, and you know, there's a scuffle for the ball, and this guy's yelling. If I had been standing, this wouldn't be the same photo. You know, I would have been shooting down. It makes, you know, a big difference. I'm looking for those moments that aren't just, you know, layups or 3-point shots. I'm looking for moments where a lot of emotion shown, because to me, those are my favorite photos of sporting events in particular. You know, I have this photo right here of this guy running the ball, and you know, it's a good photo. It's well composed. There's no emotion in it. I mean, you can see, you know, some emotion in his eyes and stuff like that, but you know, it's certainly not like the previous photo where, you know, the guy's frantically trying to call for a timeout while he's on the floor in the last seconds of the game.
Have you ever been in the line of fire, ever gotten knocked down by anybody or anything like that?
I haven't in football, which I'm glad, because I mean, those guys will come running in wearing, you know, helmets and shoulder pads and stuff at you know, 40 miles an hour. So I haven't gotten hit there. I have been run into in basketball and knocked over. Luckily, no one diving for the ball and actually like hitting me in the chest or anything. I've been hit by basketballs and soccer balls before, but yeah, I mean, you know, if you want those photos, you kind of got to get in there and get those.
Well, I'm looking at our chat here, and it's kind of blowing up because they discovered your Instagram.
Oh, okay.
and it looks like some of the students really like your dance photos.
Yeah, so dance is something I got into about, say, I guess about 5 years ago. My best friend's daughter is in the local children's ballet, and he's actually also the one who got me into sports photography. His daughter was a cheerleader, and he said, why don't you bring your camera in and get some photos of the game? But he asked me if I would take photos of their performance of Peter Pan for their spring recital. And so I took those in there, or took the camera in there, and you know, got some shots that were pretty good. Ballet in particular is very, it has a lot of rules around the way in which the body should be. And so, you know, I took photos thinking they were great photos, but then actually getting the executive director asking me to take photos down because ballerinas were in bad positions, or you know, they weren't doing the thing they were supposed to be doing. But you know, out of that, I started shooting a lot of the local dance photographers. I mean, local dancers. I do, you know, a lot of work with the local dance troupe, the Hot Springs High School dance troupe. This is Haley. She used to be with the local children's ballet and also the Hot Springs Dance Troupe, but we did this powder shoot where, you know, there's baby powder and she's throwing it up in the air, making these very cool looking formations in the air. And I think after this one, I inhaled so much baby powder, I was like out of commission for a couple of weeks. But that notwithstanding, you know, here is, this is a different Haley, but, you know, I took her downtown and we just found very cool like frames for her, so to speak. This is the veranda of the Arlington right here. But then I also like to do a lot of studio dance shoots as well, because then I can get more, I guess, action photos. Let's see if I can find this one right here, Parker doing a Firebird and, you know, using flash photography, you know, being able to capture things like this. Fortunately, a horrible, ugly concrete floor, but, you know, I mean, she just nailed it. And so that's, yeah, that's something that's kind of the focus of my Instagram. I do have, you know, some portraits in there and some nature stuff as well, but I've really been trying to sort of get in good with Ballet Arkansas, the professional ballet company here in Little Rock. And I don't know, we're getting there, but they've been using a photographer for a long time. And I don't know, she's out of Mississippi or Georgia or something like that. And so I'm trying to make inroads with some of the local dancers, trying to sort of get a portfolio going.
I assume with something like this, you'd have to be shooting in the kind of a rapid fire setting.
No, actually, I'm doing a single shot, and you just have to time it.
Oh, okay.
You know, this is, it's a single shot. You just have to time it right. And, you know, like bands, like sports, ballet has a rhythm to it. And you know that when they jump in the air at, you know, I mean, we're talking split second here. You know, if I'm a tenth of a second later or tenth of a second earlier, it's not going to be this position. And I have so many dance shots that are wrong. So, you know, I might have them do something 10 times in order to get just that exact moment that I need.
Yeah, and I'm very familiar with your studio space.
Right.
Home address at one time. So how, like in that photo, what kind of lighting is set up in that shot? Because I know the lighting is not very good naturally.
For dance shots? Yeah, it's not. No, I use I use an umbrella that's 120 centimeters large. And that's a very large umbrella, but I'm trying to make the light as soft as possible so that I don't get really harsh shadows on them. You know, in some cases you might want harsh shadows. In these dance photos, I don't. So I've got, let me see, let me think if I can, let me real quick, see if I can find someone. Yates. Or wait, actually, hold on just a second. What's his name? Ethan. There's a young man. He used to go to Lake Hamilton. I don't know if he's a senior this year or not, but he's a ballet dancer. And, you know, in this case, I wanted this really, these really strong shadows to show, you know, I mean, I don't know. I think he's 15 or 16. 15 or 16. I never had, you know, muscles like that. But I was trying to show them off by placing lights in such a way that it, you know, this raking light would cause these shadows that sort of showed off his musculature. Let me see another one real quick. Yeah, so, you know, like this right here, you can tell it's actually a very dark shoot. Yeah, the background's very dark, but you know, we're just trying to show him off. So in this case, I'm just using a single light. At other times, I might use a second light. In this one, for instance, you can see I've got light coming from this direction, but I also have a light that's over here. So I've got two lights going on. Sometimes I'll use three lights, one on that's maybe back behind him here and back behind him over here, as well as one that's in front of him to light up the front of him, of course. So yeah, it just kind of depends on what effect I'm going for. If I'm going for something more dramatic, I might use a single light and create these harsh or these dark shadows. You know, I don't know, different lights of course produce different effects, but all of it, you know, and very important. And really that's the thing that I've been dealing with the most recently is studio lighting. Trying to perfect it, trying to get it down. And, you know, I still have shoots where just at the end of the day, totally not happy with how it turned out. I have more of those still going on than I'd like to admit, but, you know, sometimes it works out really well, like with Ethan here.
And one thing you mentioned that we haven't talked about in class yet is using umbrellas. So I was just wondering if you could maybe just give a little bit of an explanation of that and the reasoning behind using an umbrella.
Yeah, let me see. I was trying to think. No. So, you know, a lot of artificial light sources, like I don't know if any of you are using external flashes on your cameras, but they produce a very harsh light, a light that comes in from the front and creates very harsh shadows as well. So, you know, you'll have maybe if you've got it to the side of someone, you'll have a very distinct shadow beneath their neck, which doesn't look fantastic. So I use light shapers, what I'll call umbrellas, light shapers all the time. And these are just to make that light source much more diffuse and much softer than just a direct light source. So of course, if you go out into the sun like it's sunny today and you hold your hand out on the ground, there's going to be this very distinct shadow where, you know, I mean, it's a very clear line of where your hand is up above it. But if you go out on a cloudy day and hold your hand out, unless you're very close to the ground, you're not going to have any shadow whatsoever. And the reason for that is because that light is coming from multiple directions when it's cloudy, as opposed to when it's sunny, where it's coming from a single direction. So I use umbrellas. They're also called soft boxes as well, to soften those studio lights and make them very soft. I guess that makes sense, right? Let me see if I can find a good example of that. So, and this is the first photo that I took that I thought to myself, you know, I might be able to do photography professionally and have, you know, that as my main job. But before this photo, you know, it just kind of whatever light was available, I was using that. And sometimes I got what I wanted, sometimes I didn't. But once I used this umbrella, and I've got this light over to his right, so it'd be up in this area over here. I don't know if you can see my cursor when I'm doing this, but it's over to his right. You know, it's coming across him. And you get these really soft shadows, like on his shorts here, You can, even see muscle striations that are going on as well, veins in his arms. And, if you had no softbox, these would be very contrasty. In other words, there'd be a lot of light and a lot of darkness and very distinct lines, not smooth lines that are going on. I wish I had an example to show you guys. But, being able to shape that light and make it soft produces these nice images, as opposed to, using a bare light bulb or, and diffusers, like soft boxes or like umbrellas, can be as simple as a lampshade, for instance. A bare bulb is going to produce a significantly different character of light than a lampshade would. I think I said that right. But so yeah, so umbrellas, absolutely use them. Typically, the bigger the umbrella, the softer the light, or the more diffuse the light. This is actually a pretty small light or umbrella right here. Whereas if we look at, let me find another one real quick. Yeah, so in this picture of my friend's daughter, this is a very big umbrella, and you can see, this backdrop is lit up a lot. The shadows are very soft under her chin, under her neck, whereas with him, he's got a smaller softbox. The background is darker because the light tends to be more focused on a smaller umbrella. The shadows are also, they're not as distinct as if, you just had a bare flash, but they are, stronger than they are over here on Morgan, for instance.
Now, do you have to adjust your strategy a little bit if you have someone with a very light skin tone versus a very dark skin tone?
Right, yeah, you do, because, like, for instance, Morgan here on the right has a very pale complexion, and if I didn't have that background lit up, she would stick out so much that it wouldn't necessarily be a pleasing picture. It'd be very contrasty. She'd look almost washed out. Well, it'd either be she looks washed out or the background's dark. You really can't see it at all. This is her cousin, actually. They're wearing the same feathers there, but she has a much more, her complexion's darker. What she's wearing is darker in color as well. So I didn't have to light up the backdrop as much in order to sort of balance those two things out. So again, depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something really dramatic, you might want to light a person with a pale complexion, very brightly, and have a very dark backdrop. But with Xavier, he balanced out really well with the background and it being a little darker. So yeah, but that's a great point. You do have to strategize in that case.
All right, we've got to think about another 5 or 6 minutes, so this would be a good time if anyone in the class has questions. And Aaron, if you have any photographs that are maybe a little bit different or unusual than anything we've seen, I see you got quite a few here that are
right
interesting in your list here.
Yeah, so another photographer I was going to talk about, and just in the interest of time I left out, was this guy. His name is, it's a husband-wife team named Robert and Shanna Park Harrison. And I really like sort of this industrial look that they had going on. Very, not abstract necessarily, but you don't really understand what's happening in that photo. That kind of informed some others that I tried this at one time, not the best at it. I mean, I tried to take some self portraits. I think I got some PlayStation controllers up in here. I was just trying to find anything that had some sort of wire effect. I got some tubing from the aquarium in the house and stuff like that. But so, it's kind of conceptual photography. But I also have, let me see, one thing I love to do is take long exposure photos. Nighttime long exposures. This, for instance, of Central Avenue, this big panel truck came as I was taking the photo and created these really cool light streaks up high and up low. Let's see, this is a 20-second exposure. So of course I have a tripod that's just sitting there as cars are passing by. Yeah.
Can you intentionally get something like that?
So number one, I mean, absolutely have to have a tripod, and then you have to kind of expose for the areas that you want to show up really well. So, I wanted this to show up, and I used a very small aperture. So I think I'm using f/22, which is the smallest aperture for that. So it's letting very little light come in, and therefore I could make a 20-second exposure. And in 20 seconds, I've got cars passing by me on Central Avenue with their lights on, and you can't see the cars that are passing, but you can see those light streaks because the camera's picking up that light source. Let's see, another example of that. This was on Hot Springs Mountain. This is the 30-second exposure. I was just waiting for a car to come up, and there's all these cool curves and stuff on Hot Springs Mountain, and just of course you can see on the right hand side here as the headlights are coming at me, the lights are white, and as it turns, of course, you've got the tail lights going by it as well. So love long exposures. You can really get some cool stuff out of that.
Cool.
Another one, this I took out of my apartment window looking to Hot Springs Mountain. This is a long exposure photo as well. This is 30 seconds. And I have a very small aperture, but if the lightning hadn't flashed in those 30 seconds, this would be an almost completely black image. But because it did, flash, I want to say like there was like 3 lightning bolts in that time. And, it just added more lightning on top of it. And, makes this really cool sort of lightning pattern here.
That's a really amazing photo. And the last few have just been really pretty stunning here. A couple of questions. One you've talked about a bit, but about your inspiration for how do you get inspired to take a photo? What kind of drives you to push that shutter button? And then the other question here is about how to get suggestions for anybody who's interested in being a full-time photographer, how they start off.
Yeah, so what was your first question again, real quick?
Yeah, I'm sorry to bombard you with 2 different
No,
questions.
no, it's okay.
The first question, you've covered this a little bit, but it's about how do you get inspired to take a photo?
I find it's things that I think are awesome, things that are very cool, like watching these dancers jump, is just so awesome to catch that single moment. Or, a great, I love emotion in sports. And so being able to capture something like an image like this, you really just have to love what it is that you're taking photos of to get really good images. Like I shot a water conference, and it is a conference of people who run municipal water facilities around Arkansas. And it's the most boring thing you can imagine. It's people talking about water, people holding up filters and stuff. they're all right photos, but you know, I don't have any passion for that at all. So, you know, that's what comes when you're working as a photographer, those kinds of jobs where people want photos of their water conference and things like that. But, you know, these, you know, I might not get paid for any of these, but just, I love creating that image. But in terms of becoming a photographer, just take photos. I mean, I've taken probably close to 500,000 photos in, you know, in the amount of time that I've had a DSLR camera. It's just taking photos and seeing what works and seeing what looks good. You know, I went through a whole period early on where I used this horrific filter that I just thought at the time was just cool. Let me see if I can find one real quick. You know, it's like I used it on this duck, and I don't understand now why. I downloaded it off the internet and I thought it was cool, and I used that for so long. But you know, as I sort of worked, I realized, you know, no, this isn't really the direction that I want my photos to go. So you just have to get in there and take photos and just find what you like, find your own style, and you know, it eventually comes. It takes you know, a lot of work and just doing small projects, you know, trying out things.
Well, great, Aaron. Well, we've reached our time limit here. It's been a really great amount of time here, and I know we've battled your vocal cords pretty hard today, so get a good glass of cold milk after this. But I appreciate the
I think
time.
so, yeah, absolutely.
And
yeah.
Hi, yeah, hey, we actually have a question. Sorry, we were trying to ask, but we couldn't, and I'm so sorry, sir.
No, that's fine.
So with a lot of your pictures, you get a lot of pictures of like movement and stuff. When I think it's just kind of a common problem a lot of people have, people just making ugly faces while doing stuff.
Yeah.
And trying to prevent that. How do you like do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Dancers in particular, there's one dancer that I shoot that, you know, if she's doing something very strenuous, I mean, you can absolutely see it on her face. And it seems like the more that I ask her not to do it, the worse her face gets. So for instance, just real quick, you know, if I no, that's fine. If I'm shooting a sporting event, I probably at a single basketball game could take as many as 1,500 pictures. I'm just constantly snapping. I've got my the camera set up to do high speed shutter release. And I'm just taking photos. And if someone's making a bad photo in one, in the next split second, they may be back to normal and they look good. So just taking lots of photos, not being afraid to take a bunch of photos as well. Yeah. But yeah, trying to get people trying to say to them, don't make this face doesn't seem to work.
Yeah. Like I said, in like, I know with some faces, you can have like a really like strong looking like facial expression that could be deemed as ugly, but it looks really nice too. So that's also, it's just like all of your stuff just looks so nice.
Everybody just looks so, we're like scrolling through your Instagram, looking at all your stuff. Everybody looks so like confident and strong in all the pictures.
And you know, and that's particularly with portrait photography. That's something that doesn't come naturally to me. I have a lot of photos of people just not looking their best. And, you know, I might take 100 photos in a portrait session, but only get 10 that I like. And, you know, you just have to find those. It's when you have to experiment. Trying to make people feel comfortable. I can do it sometimes. If they're too nervous, I get nervous and then it just goes downhill. So, you know, take a lot of photos and usually you can find some that you like in there.
All right, well, and I think probably people are starting to log off because it's
okay.
But the last thing, where's a good place to find your work? Where would they want to go if they want to see more of your photos?
Yeah, so really where I sort of put the premium stuff is on Instagram. I'm at Aaron Brewer Photo. It's 2 A's in Aaron. And that's, you know, a lot of dance stuff, a lot of portraits as well. But, you know, you can also follow me on Facebook at Aaron Brewer. I post a lot of stuff there, a lot of stuff that's not related to photography as well. But, you know, you get more sports photos on Facebook than you do, you know, maybe on Instagram. So
You're also a really great memer, so I should recommend that people check out. Is that blood? Is that
is
right?
that blood? Yeah, there's
So
some.
that'll show a different side of.
I mean, yeah, so some questionable material on there at times. So
Okay, well, great. I think everybody enjoyed this here. So enjoy your day, Aaron, and hopefully we'll see you around in the world sometime soon.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for attending.